IVM.
Coming out, it's been made out to be this rite of passage, almost like a milestone in being a queer person. I want to take a moment and say that's incorrect. The only person one has to come out to is themselves. I mean, I presume there are a lot of straight people here. Have you ever had a conversation with your parents saying, listen, I'm straight? No, you haven't. Because you don't need to. And it should be that much of a non-issue.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Coffee podcast. This is a special episode and it was recorded live late in June this year, which was also Pride Month. As many of you know, I have a day job and it is with this wonderful organization called WPP, which takes diversity and inclusivity at the workplace very seriously. This episode has excerpts from a live panel discussion I had with 4 very interesting people. They're all employees of the WPP group. But what I loved about this panel and why I felt it should be a Filter Coffee podcast episode is because it represents corporate India in all its diversity. These 4 could have been from any company in India. They're also from different parts of the corporate hierarchy. Inigo Franco is Chief Financial Officer, South Asia, Middle East and North Africa for the WPP group. Ruchi Mathur is Senior Vice President at Mindshare. She heads a very large office which is responsible for Mindshare's North and East businesses. Ruchi is also part of a leadership group that is responsible for driving diversity and inclusivity in the organization. Jennifer Rodriguez is one of our youngest stars and someone I know is personally very passionate about the subject of pride. And Sunetro Lahiri is a vice president at Glitch and is also a great commentator of the queer movement in India, mostly through his very successful podcast, GayVCD. Inigo and Sunetro are openly gay, and I spoke to them about their personal journeys from coming out to family and how things panned out at their respective workplaces. I had a realistic conversation with all 4 of them, which was very honest and which was about where we are really in India in a post-2018 world, and how safe is the urban workplace today for someone from the LGBTQ community. We will now cut to what I had recorded live on that day. Hello everyone and welcome to this discussion, especially to my fellow panelists. I know most of you and reasonably well. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion because all of you are such interesting minds. And any given day, I would love to sit down for a drink with you and have a long conversation. But B, I know that all of you are also incredibly passionate about what we are about to discuss, the topic at hand. And at the outset, I wanted to sort of share the fact that I'm probably going to be coming in as a novice, as a lay person to this conversation, because I believe, and it is important for me to acknowledge that my own knowledge of this space is fairly limited. And some of my questions, I apologize if it comes across as insensitive, because it's largely coming from a place of ignorance. Right? It is important for me to sort of acknowledge that before we get into this discussion. But one thing I'm very aware of, right, is the importance of what happened in September 2018. And I thought that's probably a good place for us to start, where we can talk about what's happening in India at this point. The event I'm referring to, of course, is the amendment of Section 377, which had criminalized homosexuality. And Sunitra, I want to start with you. How did you feel, when this happened, and what do you think is the impact of this particular event and the overall LGBTQ movement in India?
Okay, first and foremost, I want to tell you about what I felt that day. I want to preface that by saying I consider myself incredibly privileged to not have faced any, crazy repercussions of, 377 or or even societally, of course, there's been bullying. Of course, there's been, catcalling and name calling and stuff like that, which me and my therapist have to deal with. But largely, I haven't faced the larger repercussions of what the larger community faces. And for me, I never thought that, okay, so when 377 will be scrapped, I'll be like it'll be like a nice moment for me. I remember seeing the news, and I didn't even see the news. It was sent to me on Instagram messages. There were so many far flung, long lost friends who were sort of messaging me. And I could feel hot tears. And I don't know why. And it's just that I keep going back to that day, and I sort of rounded up by saying this. It was the freedom I never knew I needed, because it's official, because it's like, in the smallest way, you felt validated, your presence felt validated, versus years and years, you could feel like, even if you had privilege, you could feel like someone could take a step against you and you would have nothing. So while that was a massive step, today we are in a space where, sure, there is this one thing that's happened, but it's just, we've scratched a little. You know how when our freezers get like clogged and we try and break that ice box, it's just that has happened. We have a long way to go. There is, so basically what has happened today is, there is the most like bare minimum validation of your presence, of our presence, and nothing more than that, because there are no laws that can protect us in terms of partnerships. I mean, there are ways to go around it, but there are no explicit ways in which the legislature protects us in terms of work, in terms of property, things like that. Of course, there are anti-harassment clauses and stuff like that. That's a different story, but that's again a very Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta conversation, which is a very privileged conversation. So that's where we are at. We are not even we are barely starting the struggle. We are barely starting the journey of changing things. So long way to go. Long way to go.
Right. Just to put that in perspective, all that has happened is that this is the government telling the citizen that we're not now going to arrest you or put you behind bars, right, at this point.
Yeah, so we won't. Sorry. So basically, the government has come in and said that, oh, so all this time we were waiting for a moment to arrest you. Now we'll let that pass. So imagine how privileged we are to feel like, oh, so the police will not arrest us. It will still do a lot of other things, but they will not arrest us. So that's where it's at. That's the sentiment. Of course, it is a positive. I'm not going to take away from it, but you realize the chasm is so wide. There is still a huge bridge to kind of cover.
Right. Inigo, you've seen this play out in different countries very differently, and you have a global perspective on this conversation. I wanted to talk to you about, Sunitro mentioned how big the chasm is and how long we have to go. But I want you to probably put this in more perspective, better perspective for us. What are some of the critical milestones that we need to cross, especially from a legal perspective? Right, we are not yet at a place where marriage is legal, and then there are issues regarding property and the transfer of that, etc. So put that in perspective for us, please.
I mean, I think of course, we have seen things moving on in the U.S. We've seen things, when I was living in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, basically, that's where I actually got my first civil union. So basically, and it just feels, it feels the protection from the partner, right? I mean, we are in something we're together for something, and whatever you build, basically, if things go apart, at least there's some protection. I mean, there's some legal, when you go to work, your partner is recognized, when all the benefits, medical, blah, 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 everything is extended to your partner. So it actually gives, confidence, it gives security as, that again, there's a system that in a way recognizes you, protects you. And even though if things go bad in a relationship, there's securities and there's a safety net for both partners. So, Mexico is legal unions, civil unions are recognized. Brazil, that's where I got mine. The US definitely is way ahead. As Sunitro said, for India, I think the very first step has been taken, but it's very little, I would say. there's a lot of things to do. But I think as corporations, we as WPP, we can do a lot more to make sure that that even though legally, things have not moved so fast, how we as WP can make sure that, we move these things faster. But for example, one of the things that we're looking is at, how do we recognize same-sex partnerships and give them extend the same medical benefits, even though it's not supported by law. So I think in each country where progress has been made, that's very good. In countries like India, where things have not moved that far, I think there's a lot that we as corporates can do to make sure that we're inclusive. That's what I would say.
Ruchi, you're a very senior leader and someone who has voluntarily been a very, very big part of the leadership initiative in this organization, especially from a diversity and inclusion perspective. How ready do you feel organizations in India are to even have this sort of a conversation today?
Karthik, I think there's awareness, but I completely agree with what Sunitro said. I don't think we've even scratched the surface yet, right? And if I talk about it from my perspective, and you and I have spoken about this, there's still this element of discomfort that we feel, and this need to sort of try to understand their world, this need to protect them at times. And I'd like to talk about a personal experience here. So I have this friend we were together in school, and I think it was somewhere in college that she sort of came out and spoke about her preferences, and she comes from a very well-to-do family in Mumbai. So I guess the first thing that she did when she came and spoke about it was move out of India. Right? Probably didn't want to put her family through it and protect the family name and whatever else, and she moved out of India. She went to the US. Went on to do really well for herself, got married, has a child now, and in fact, as we speak, she's standing for director of finance in the Senate there, right? So that's how well she's doing. But look at me. I'm still calling her my friend. I'm still calling her someone I know. Why the hell can't I get myself to say, I am so proud of you, right? Because he's talking about it. Has all her achievements and every milestone of her life on her Insta, on her Facebook. But somewhere I have assigned myself as her protector, right? And I think till we don't sort of get it, we can't start making that difference. So there's a lot of work to be done, Karthik, and I'm glad that Inigo's talked about it, and I'm glad that WPP is thinking about it. In fact, when I started to think about as Group M, what is it that we can do? I didn't have to look very far because there are so many companies out there who are actually doing a lot of work. Whether it's Godrej, whether it's Infosys, whether it's Google, whether it's Barclays. When I say Barclays, what do you think about? You think about sporting events and their association with those sporting events, right? Little did we know that Barclays is actually the first company to sponsor the first Indian LGBT film festival. The CEO himself was there for the event, and he encouraged all his staff to come there as a show of support. And very simple things. And Inigo, you touched upon it, right? Health insurance for the partners, or a very, very simple thing like they don't even, when you're filling in the HR formalities, they don't even use the word spouse. They've replaced the word spouse with partner. I think these little things can make a lot of difference. There's a lot to deal with, right? But I'm glad we're talking about it, and I hope that we can start making a difference where it really matters and so on.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just thinking about this as you were speaking, that, today I'm moderating a panel discussion on this subject, and I'm talking about this on an episode in the podcast. But in my personal life, I'll really struggle to have this conversation with my dad. Even the political part of it, even the Section 377 part of it. I don't know whether we'll be able to see eye to eye on the subject. But moving along, Jenny, no pressure on being the youngest member of this panel, and hence the need to be the wokest among us, I guess. But I know that you are very connected to different kinds of conversations on this subject around you. You're very connected to what is happening in this space. How are you seeing the discourse changing, especially in the last few years around you?
Yeah. So I actually want to pick up on something that Ruchi mentioned about how we tend to feel the sense of protection towards our friends and colleagues who are in the LGBTQ plus community, but they are just out there and proud. And that's something I've noticed within the people that I know. I mean, years ago, the situation was where they felt a little bit used to restrict themselves in the way that they express themselves, especially on social media. Like I have very close friends who probably have separate private profiles on the platform that they keep as a medium to communicate with the community, and their more public profiles were where they were maybe a little more reserved. But I've seen a massive change amongst my friends that I know, where they're just so expressive and they don't feel the need to keep those two sides separate, because that is their identity. They feel free to express their true selves online as well. I think there's a lot of conversation happening online also, which is encouraging that. A lot of popular faces that are stepping up, voicing their opinion there. So I think that sense of encouragement has definitely come in, but I completely agree. It might seem a little surface level. There's certainly a lot more to be done.
Right. Yeah. So, Nitra, you mentioned right at the beginning that you feel that your journey is different and maybe more privileged. Can you let us in a bit into your journey of coming out? Initially to friends and family, and then maybe later on at your workplace even.
Again, I shall preface this by saying my approach is not always a recommended approach, because my approach was a very militant approach. So I did give my family a chance to say no. So my conversation with them was that, and it wasn't even first and foremost, I identify as queer, not gay, not bisexual. Why? Because I feel like the word queer is an all-encompassing term, and I feel sexuality is a very fluid force. And I strictly believe in Alfred Kinsey. I mean, there's this sex theorist, sociologist, ex-sociologist called Alfred Kinsey, and he talks about a scale, and he talks about the fact that everyone, like 90% of people, so the scale is like on a 0 to 14, and 0 is exclusively straight, and 14 is exclusively, gay or lesbian or whatever. And he talks about the fact that 90% of people exercise within 2 and 12, because that's how fluid it is. So my conversation with my family was, I'm priming you guys for it. I can get a girl home, I can get a guy home, and that can be my partner for life. I might not even want a stamp of, approval from the government on it. Deal with it. So that was my conversation, and the larger conversation to them was that I would like you to be part of my life as I move on with all of this information that I'm sharing. The ball's in your court. If you want to be part of my life, you have to be okay with all of this, or I'm okay with you not being part of my life. Now, where did this cockiness come from? The cockiness came from the fact that I could have this conversation only after I started earning, and only I had built out in my head the worst case scenario, that they would disown me. They would like say Mada ladla bigad gaya, like if they said shit like that, I would be okay cutting them off, and I know that I would not face crazy repercussions. And so that was my beautiful coming out, which was not so much a coming out as an ultimatum that you better be okay with it. So yeah, so that was my that happened at the age of 19, when I was in college. And while I was in college, I started working, and once I started working, once I had an idea that I'm self-sufficient, I can really broach this conversation.
Yeah, but I think Sunit, it sounds very good, right? But I think there's a lot of emotions that go through it. It is not easy to say, you're cutting your life of like whatever your life was or meant, and you're saying at this point, you come to your family and say, listen, either you like it or not. I mean, there's some fears. This is your mother, your father, the people, the love that first So basically, I mean, I think it's easier when we articulate it, but I think emotionally, there's a lot of things that go on, right? Because it's not easy to say goodbye, like, okay, mom, thank you for being there, but like, now I'm cutting you off. It's not going to be easy.
See, like I said, everyone has their own approach. Everyone has their own way of dealing with this. That's why I said that, my approach might not necessarily be the one that everyone needs to follow, and I don't recommend it. But for me, it was about prioritizing being authentic and being true to myself, no matter what comes in my way. Now, that's a priority I chose. There are people who choose to prioritize the love and the responsibility they have as wards of their parents, and chose not to prioritize that, and that's my choice. And that's what I'm and I also want to come to that point of saying that, coming out, it's a very it's been made out to be this rite of passage, almost like a milestone in being a queer person. I want to take a moment and say that's incorrect. The only person one has to come out to is themselves. I mean, I presume there are a lot of straight people here. Have you ever had a conversation with your parents saying, listen, I'm straight? No, you haven't. Because you don't need to. And it should be that much of a non-issue. That's my belief. And what's happened also is that, the idea of coming out has become a very triggering topic for a lot of kids like me who've grown up in small towns. I grew up in Ranchi. So when a lot of these kids see, very privileged, and I'm glad that a lot of these privileged kids have parents who are very understanding. They're having coming out parties and with their parents. When they see that, it ends up creating this idea that I'm deficient in some way. Maybe I can't, put this out, and the only victim becomes the person themselves. And that's why I kind of really push the idea that coming out is not a necessity. It's okay if you don't want to come out, and if you take your time to be comfortable, to become, to live the truest version of yourself. The only person you need to come out to is yourself. That's when it all kind of falls in place.
Given that today there is so much conversation about this, and we read so many things on social media, within the community, I'm also wondering if there is also a lot of peer pressure when it comes to the issue of coming out, right? If you're not coming out at a certain point, you're not doing this right, or something like that.
No, I will never, like, peer pressure. I mean, like, within the let's say friends, that or like peer pressure, like what would be we're talking about peers, like friends or peers. I think I would say there's no. I mean, I never face pressure, right? I think one of the things that Sunitra was saying, and I totally agree with this. I think it's more the demons that you create for yourself, right? All the things, all this journey, internal journey of like, if I say this, what is going to be the reaction? If I do this, what is going to be the reaction? I think it's a big relief. I think, when you come out, I mean, like the coming out thing or topic, basically, you will be surprised how many people will be like, yeah, we knew it. Or like, they don't give up. I mean, they will be okay and they continue doing their life. And you're like, okay. And I was struggling all this time because I was thinking, I was getting all these impressions. But at one point, people that really care for you, people that really love you, they will say like, okay, besides, it's just one, they don't see this, they don't detach this from a person that you have been for the past life. But I would say in this journey, there's some people that you will lose. And that's something that it's going to be their choice. It doesn't come easy, but for example, for me, I remember my best friend from we were like 6, I know her since 6 years old, and we were friends forever. When I came out to her first reaction was, what am I going to tell our friends? And I was just, excuse me? So I said, so you're more concerned about what are you going to tell our friends than actually how do you feel or how can I help you? So it's a surprising thing. Like I think peer pressure, I've never felt it. I think it's more like the relationships that actually come along in the journey that you're going to go, or the relationships that actually you have to accept that they were there, they serve their purpose in life for a certain time, and they're not ready to move with you. So I think you find both ways. I've never felt a pressure per se, but I have It's just how you witness how other people react to you coming out or you sharing this with them. That I would say that has been my experience.
Yeah. I think if I may just come in here, we tend to have very polarized reactions, right? Either we want to know, we are inherently nosy people, right? We want to know, but I've also had friends who shared their experiences on when they have shared, when they have sort of, trusted somebody and shared, the person goes into a mute zone, right? And then there's this non-acceptance. They don't want to talk about it. I think the need of the hour is to normalize it. And again, Sunitra, like you said, I don't go and tell my parents I'm straight. Then after somebody has spoken to you, why can't it just be a normal conversation? Why can't we still discuss the date nights? Why can't we still discuss the other plans? Why does it suddenly get into a hush-hush mode? Because now I know something that shall not be spoken about.
Yeah.
Jenny, we're talking about coming out in the place of work, and I know that you had a very interesting incident in your personal life related to this. You want to share that?
Yeah, so I mean, I picked up a lot of things from what Amigo was saying as well. There was a close friend of mine who, decided she wanted to come out to us. I mean, you could see we had met up one day. She seemed super tense, and then she just, told us, "I need to tell you this," and she told it to us, and we were just like, "We are happy you've told us. We're really glad." And then you could see the sense of relief on her face, where she was just like, "Okay, I had built this up so much in my head." To be such an issue or to brace myself for all kinds of reactions. She didn't expect us to just be like, that's amazing, let's get into a group hug and celebrate this for you. So I think that pressure also of having to come out or wondering what someone's going to say also adds to all of that stress.
Inigo, I want to come to you for the next question. We're talking about coming out, and then there is one journey of doing this in your personal social life that Sunitra spoke about, and then of course the other part of it, which is being open about it in your place of work. With the example that Jenny gave, is the latter actually more difficult than it is to talk about this to your family and your friends?
I don't know. I think I've been very lucky to work for WPP. To be honest with you. And I think it's not because I'm representing WPP, but I think, the moment I came out to WPP in such a way that, when I was being transferred and then, who's traveling with you and you're like, my partner. And they start thinking, okay, is your partner? And yeah, yes, my partner. And then okay, so you have to disclose. This is the first time you disclose that, okay, it's a male. And they're just like, okay. And you're just like, and you're worried they're gonna ask you. I mean, I think at the corporate level, I think we don't actually care with whom you love, whom you do whatever you want to do. We don't care. I think it's that. I mean, maybe it's wrong what I'm gonna say, but normally I know Sunita, maybe you share the same thing as me. I think females are more open when you come out. You suddenly have so many more. I think women are more. Let's say more open, more receptive. And I think males will be like, okay. So nothing changes how they treat you. But I think in my experience, I would say, I work for all the CFOs in India, and I would say most of the females are really, they become very close. So I don't know if this is, in my workplace, have I ever felt or have I ever heard whomever, said what I do, or even though when there's a WPP event, I have come with my partner to the event. So when the first time I landed into WPP, when they did the welcome party, I came with my partner to the party. So I did not announce it. I did not, as Sunitro said, it's not by the way, Inigo Franco, and Annis is my partner. He just came as, as your wife, your girlfriend, whoever wants to come in, he just came with me. So, I think I was stressed. I would say, yes, I was stressed because I didn't know it's another culture. I know there's other things that you need to consider. It's a position that I have within the group. Of course, it creates some stress. To be honest, yes, I was inside me. I was just like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to be the reaction? But I would say, I think senior people, it was just as, you come with your partner regardless of your sexual orientation or who the partner it is. There was no rejection. So there has never been a rejection. So I think we are lucky in the way WP is structuring the inclusive diversity. I think we're lucky to work in an organization as ours. And again, in India, I think it has been very receptive, and also maybe it's the advertising industry, so it tends to be a little bit more like more friendly than banking. Regardless if there's some progress, but I have friends that work for key banks in India, and they're horrified to go out and say something about their sexuality. They fear about saying they fear for their job, they fear for career progress. They fear for many things. So I think locally for us at WP, we don't have that fear. But I think peers depends on the industry, depends on the open-mindedness. But I think as WP, I think we're a lucky bunch, I would say.
When it comes to the workplace, right? I would like to believe that there is a conscious bias, and then there is the subconscious one, and I feel the latter is probably more dangerous because any of us could be saying something which we didn't intend to, but it could be causing harm and it could instill fear in the mind of someone listening to it. Right? What are some of the examples of the subconscious bias that we probably are not fully aware of yet, especially at the workplace?
So there are two things over here. Okay, so there is obviously in this example there are two parties. There is I'll say the perpetrator and the receiver. I mean, perpetrator is a really strong word. So what's happened today is, given that we as a community we've been silent for so long that now it's come to a point where we are vociferous almost to an aggressive limit. And as a result of that, what happens is that on one hand, there is an aggressive defensive stance that we will not let anything pass by. And on the other hand, there is a society overall that's just ignorant about nuance, that has no example to follow in terms of how to talk to someone who's queer, or how to talk to someone about their coming out, or anything at all. So literally there is on one hand just zero knowledge, and on the other hand there is an expectation of 100% knowledge, and the twain do not meet. So what ends up happening is there are a lot of things that can trigger people using the wrong pronouns, saying things which can be unmitigated disasters in terms of making someone feel unsafe, like talking about a gay couple and saying shit like who's the husband, who's the wife in your relationship, stuff like that. And it all comes from a place of just ignorance. Now, if I had to create a utopian world, in that utopian world there would be the possibility of a conversation and mingling and learning, because that's what conversations can do. Of course, this person might, and of course, I'm not condoning bad behavior here. I'm not condoning bullying here. I'm not condoning any of that. I'm talking about people who have the right, intent, but do not know how to exercise that intent. Do not know how to execute that intent. So, how do you talk to people? What kind of answer do you need to talk to people? These are things that who's going to teach them? And honestly, I used to be on that side where I used to be my father. With my father, there was a long period where I felt like this man is just not trying his best to kind of get through to me. And then there was this one breakthrough conversation I'd had with him where his response was, I don't know how to. I don't know how to. And that's when I realized that I have to take him through this journey. I have to make sure that I pepper him with enough information. And immediately the change started. This is a 68-year-old man who is wrapping his head around a very new concept, who's wrapping his head. I mean, his world obviously is like very, very different. I mean, he thought, oh, like, there'll be grandsons and all of that. And all of that has gone dust. Like, and so as a result, there's a new reality for him which now he's beginning to appreciate because I have to help him appreciate it. Otherwise, where is the point of reference for him? And that's what I mean. We need to give each other the benefit of doubt, and there needs to be an active sort of engagement in helping people be aware and educating people. Otherwise, there will only be a fight and there will only be walls. And walls don't create movement. So we need movement.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I agree totally with Sunitra. I think, we can just, it goes both ways, right? You cannot expect both ways. I mean, like, the other part has to understand, but also you have to make the effort to make sure that they understand you. But it has to be, you have to create this win-win situation because nobody has a responsibility towards each other. So let's say, I agree. I think sometimes as a community-wise, we tend to think that, you have to be on the defensive, like everybody's against you. And I don't think it's right. I mean, because the other person, as Sunitro said, the other side may be confused as well. Maybe don't know how to treat you. Maybe don't know how to have conversation because you're breaking something that they have been born with, an idea that has been socially accepted. And it's the norm and is the expectation. And you bring and shake these things for them. So, yeah, I think it's both ways. We cannot expect the other part to actually take over us, and we should not victimize ourselves because the other part is not understanding. That doesn't exist. Like we have to find each other in the middle. So I totally agree with Sunitro. I think it is not one way; it's both ways, and then we need to figure out how to bridge that gap.
Recently I was part of a brainstorming exercise, and someone used the phrase vernacular languages, and suddenly some 5-6 people were up in arms, and they were saying, how this is not the right thing to use because it is very colonial in nature, even bordering on racism. And the right thing to say here would be Indic languages or regional languages, simply put. I am now wondering how far we've come as a country in terms of understanding these differences when it comes to issues like racism and politics to a certain extent. Maybe we have become more woke as a country in the last 10 years than we probably did in the 20-30 years preceding 2010. But I'm also equally aware of the fact that when it comes to the LGBTQ movement, our knowledge is still not sufficient. Right? This muscle memory that we have when it comes to issues like racism doesn't really exist yet in this space. And I know this personally because, the other day I was looking at an Instagram post where I was told that there are 20-25 different flags which represent different parts of the LGBTQ movement. And I was very disappointed with myself that I did not know this. How can we become better, especially as a workplace, in getting people to learn and understand more?
We're so good at doing this for our clients, right? How do you cause habit change? How do you create sustainable solutions, right? Why can't we just do that, apply that to ourselves, And therefore, just 1 month, 1 week, one activity is not going to help. And like you said, it has to be a part of what we do every single day. It has to be, we have to normalize it. We have to change the codes. We have to change the ways of working. We have to change the thinking. And all that will only happen if it happens every day, right? I mean, decency is not just for other brands, right? It's for us as well.
Yeah, another thing that I feel is absolutely essential is, we and because I happen to be an ad man, we love to put a large plan together, but then we often forget sometimes that we also have to adapt and listen and learn from the people that we are making the plan for. And a large part of queer movements have kind of, the ones that have not worked because they've excluded rather than included. And that's what we need to do. We need to figure how we're constantly in a constant loop of feedback where we are bettering ourselves in terms of how we are changing things, and we are constantly evolving. It's not, there's a statement that within the queer community is very prominent, that this is not an event, it's not a moment, it's a continual process. And that's what it has to be. Till the day that we feel things are so normalized that a panel like this would feel redundant, we have to continue to do that. And that's how it is. Listen and learn and adapt and evolve.
A very important part of what we're talking about, I'm assuming, is actually having the members of the community in the workforce, isn't it? Something that we would otherwise refer to as diversity and inclusivity in our workforce. And for me, the challenge that I've always struggled with is in hiring, right? What is the right way to hire for us to be diverse? I've been speaking to a lot of heads of organizations, and some of them have told me that hiring blind as a process has really worked for them. But I'm not really sure if that will work universally, because in my own case, if I put out a post on LinkedIn saying I'm hiring for a position, I think the people who would apply are people who have access and people who don't think twice or fear about applying to an organization like mine. But I'm wondering whether that will really address what we are talking about, because that brings to light again the equality versus equity sort of a situation, right? I would love to hear, because many of you are senior leaders in an organization. I would love to hear your views on how should one hire right.
I think we had this conversation, or how do I hire blind? I think there's some things that you actually are blind when you're hiring, and there's some things that you're not blind when you're hiring, right? So, for example, and I think about this, that we had, there was this call, like I think it was like last week, about the recapping of the Black Lives Matter movement within the WPP, and all the new appointments that have been done on the to get blacks or people of color into prominent positions within the WPP. I think for us, or let's say the LGBTQA plus whatever common community, basically, you cannot just, it's not something that is evident, right? For some people, it will be, for others, it won't be. So I think just hiring blind is not 100%. It can work. It did not fully work, because there's some things that you can ask and some things that you cannot ask, and some things that are apparent and some things that are not. I think the hiring should be on the talent. Whomever has the right skills can deliver the best, and we just have to create a work environment, a workplace that is fully inclusive. So one thing should not follow the other. I think the hiring, we hire because we want the people to have the right skill sets, and we create the workspace where they're going to flourish regardless of what their sexual orientation is. So that would be my thought.
Karthik, we've spoken about this. I'm a huge believer of meritocracy, and I don't subscribe to any quota system. It just gets my goal. But a very interesting article I was reading about in the US, right? And seemingly a lot more open and accepting compared to where we are. So I don't even know if that statistics exists for India. But in the US, apparently LGBTQ women at CXO posts is less than 1/5 of men, LGBTQ men at that post, right? Which means biases do exist, right? If it was a marginal difference, I'd attribute that to merit. Maybe the men just did that for that position. He did much better than she did. But that kind of gap really makes me think that, unlike what Inigo said, that probably women come out much more than men do, and they are. It's biting them clearly in the US then, right? Especially when it comes to the top positions. And therefore, to that point about hiring blind, I agree with Inigo. It's what you are hiding. You're not hiding the merit. You're not hiding the experience, the achievements. You're just hiding the gender. Right? You're just hiding things that really don't make someone think somebody is better suited because of a demographic. Right? So I would say that's a great starting point. There are many other things that can happen, but I think to begin with, it's a great starting point and something we should very seriously evaluate.
Great. My final question to all of you, and to Inigo and Sunithro, to you specifically, is how can we become better? How can we increase our knowledge on the subject, which will then directly have an impact on how sensitive we are. What are the things that we can read, watch, and listen to? Of course, all of this is besides Sunitra's wonderful podcast, KBCD. Tell us more.
So one is, of course, exposure helps. Exposure to different kinds of literature, shows here and there, and I can literally every single episode of mine ends with a recommendation of either a writer or a film or a filmmaker. But I'm not going to get into that. But what's missing, however, from the Indian sort of milieu is these examples. So it's so important to kind of the term intersectionality is so important to us because struggles kind of merge when it comes to various societies, various segments of society, be it the queer movement or the Dalit movement. We need to be a little more open to the idea of what intersectionality means, and the fact that when we come together, we are not, because equality can exist, but equity you need to really really work hard towards, because equality means someone who's systemically and systematically behind will continue staying behind, and you are just giving the same opportunity to two people.
Yeah.
So the person just keeps staying behind. But equity is what we need to start working towards, where we work towards undoing that barrier, undoing that gap that has been built over years and centuries of oppression and repression. And that's what we need to open our minds to. And there are so many people. And one recommendation I'll make is there's a creator called Alok Ved Menon. He's non-binary. He's a poet. He's a creative writer, and he talks about the idea of just quashing quashing the idea of a male and female, and the sexes versus the gender you're born with. And he also talks about a large part of intersectionality. So everyone over here, if you want to open your minds, listen to someone like Alok Ved Menon. There are so many creators out there. I mean, yes, KBCD, please listen to me. We do talk about a lot of uncomfortable topics like cutting family out, like we were talking about. And there have been unfortunate situations like that. So be open to feeling uncomfortable. Be open to feeling uncomfortable in this journey of opening your mind, because when you feel uncomfortable, that means a little change is happening. And that's the only advice from a humble guy from me. Yeah, like me. Yeah.
I think Sunitra is going more into the what you should read. I think for me was more that I would say, whatever is going, whomever is in the journey, they are in their own respective lives. I mean, I think you have to make sure that you're stronger than you think that you are. You have to think that every day that you wake up, when you're going through this journey to defining who you are, basically there's so many things happening with you. You have to have a personality that you don't have. It's not necessarily reflects you, but you have to put this personality during the whole day. So I think that one thing, just think that this may be kind of your superpower. You are able to be who you are not in order to survive, and it's a very painful process. I mean, I think many people struggle with this. So I would say, don't neglect counseling. Don't neglect to have somebody that whenever you need help, you have somebody to reach out, because the journey and the society, the journey, that what make people think, what they don't think, it's very tough and can get really into all of us that have experienced that life journey. So never. I mean, I think for me, at one point, I think I luckily I found a good psychologist, and actually that really helped, because there's many start, settling many things or many fears that you may have, and also don't underestimate that maybe all these things that you're thinking of your head that people will think whenever you come out, people don't even give a shit. Sorry for the French. So don't overkill. Yeah, it can be a very traumatic process for some. For others, don't. But I think at the end of the day, you are who you are. People actually don't care who you love. As long as you're true to yourself, people will accept you and love you the way you are. So just find somebody to talk to. Don't give up. It's can be a very difficult journey, but we hope as LGBTQ will do something to alleviate that journey. So I think it's a wonderful place to be. So just seek help whenever you need help. Don't deny that, because the journey is tough.
And to add to all of that, I know a large part of the confusion lies in how to be an ally. Ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions, because I know that, this information overload can be an overload. It can be overwhelming, but ask questions. Someone will give you the answer. From the community, we are willing and only too open to give answers. So be open to questions. You will get the answers.
So that was the special live episode this week. I really hope you enjoyed it, and it helped broaden your view on the subject. You can listen to other episodes of the show and also Sunitro's wonderful podcast, GayBCD, on all major podcasting platforms. Thank you, and speak to you next week. Cheers. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik, that's Karthik with an H, on Twitter, and filter_coffee, that's coffee with a K, on Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Would like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Siet, and Global Victoria. Thank you so much for making this possible. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by the hilarious and extremely charming illusionist and therapist Suhani Shah. They talk about different aspects of magic like sleight of hand, mind reading, mentalism, and more. The Habit Coach completed 500 episodes, 500, and Ashton has a special message for us on the occasion. Do check that out. We had Lekini Desai, founder of the India Ethnic Company, talk to Varun Digarala about their story and the Hatke marketing idea that made them popular. On Nankari, South Africa celebrated World Chocolate Day. They took us through the origins, history, economics of chocolate, and shared their memories. On Tere Mere Raste, Keshu Chaturvedi shares an interesting story from Leh. Check out an updated version of the Traveling Professor's Diary. It's now rechristened as Smarter with Sid. Same old brain filled with new stories and insights. This time, listening to know why you should keep things simple. And finally, check out Global Victoria Tech Talks. This one is in partnership with Global Victoria, the trade arm of the Government of Victoria in Australia. The edtech and gaming industries are booming in Victoria, Australia, and this series is meant to showcase that. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro,
and me, Farhad,
on our show, GayBCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of GayBCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcasts website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.